I'm very excited to see you all here. We are Elena Alexander, John Curley, and Jiwon Choi. We will read, and hopefully it'll be worth your while coming to Brooklyn, for those of you who actually came to Brooklyn. All right, so it is my honor to bring up Elena Alexander.
Hi, hello. You can hear me, yes? Okay. So I don't do banter well. I read everything. So here it is. I'm Elena Alexander. And so thanks to Jiwon Choi for getting the ball rolling on this reading and for being part of the committed crew who have kept this green space going for decades. To John Curley for agreeing to join Jiwon and me once again, having read together at KGB in 2018. And to Stephen Keene for videotaping this reading. And to all of you for being here. Thank you. Okay. Let's see if I can do this without tripping or falling over a cord. Okay. The first poem The first poem I'm going to read is called Mid-Sentence at Year's End. It refers to a freezing, clear New Year's Eve day. I think I chose it just to kind of deal with the humidity and the heat of summer. It really wasn't conscious. I thought, that's odd. And this was in Lower Manhattan. I was taking a walk with my friend Mary Schultz, to whom this is dedicated. In the first stanza, you will hear the word gobo. How many here know what a gobo is? My theater people. Okay, gobo literally means go between optics. It's a stencil that goes in front of a theater light that makes a pattern on the floor or the wall. So I just wanted to tell you what the word is. So as I'm reading, you don't say gobo. What is a gobo? So okay, now we know that. And the artist referred to in the first stanza is the late Gordon Matta Clark. And now she reads. Okay, mid-sentence at year's end for Mary Schultz. Or those pleasing days, merely seeing light, city winter light slicing diagonals across old bricks, windows reflecting patterned circles recalling gobos. Think, walking with a friend, speaking of one artist's long ago ear-splitting incisions into what had been abandoned. Other days replays sting as loops go unspooling, some framed and frozen. Note, box turtle dead, flies occupying its eye sockets like augmented molecules, or a brother, eyes wide open, uncomprehending, ending, nesting within that word, his future abandoned. Years rip by, speed of motorcycle perforating silence, impudent or snow falling down air shaft, rustling subtle as a tutu's, bringing one out of time into making, into nature, into small words, broad meanings. See, end, art, you. Numbered observations divisible by opinions. Favorite food, worst movie, funniest joke reclaimed like abandoned buildings by memories charged sensorium. Footfalls, front porch, sandbar. Watching, being, staying with. Feel, he died young, you might say. All kinds of days opaque, or box turtle equals light. Just lower this just a tad. Okay, that's more comfortable for me. You can still hear me and I feel better. Wow! It's a sound poem. A sound found poem. Okay. You will hear the name Nyx, N-Y-X. Nyx is a mythological goddess thought to be older and stronger than Zeus. Oi, oi. Moño, who speaks Spanish? Moño is a hair bun or a chignon. So when you hear the word moño, that's what that is. Again, the reason I do this is to not let people escape the poem. You know what I mean? By thinking, wait, what does that mean? What does that mean? So that's what that's about. Okay. Respite from Our Lady Perpetual. You would not think stars could so easily bruise and air. Astral clashing, you see, it is where you look, water too, and blood. Each time we touch black holes, blue stars, we the same, a partial illume, borderless journey. Yes, I have loose molecules. I said that once to a friend named Nyx. At length, any Paul is full of potential lark as of perplexity and dismay. Do eyes of all small animals brighten the dark? What about insects? Night partner's day on world's other side, fringe of black shawl against milky skin of señorita, threads of silver woven through her moño. Fiery stars, freezing space, we the same. Let's see, do I have notes on wood? Yeah, okay. In this next poem called Wood Praise, the word wood is W-O-O-D. The word color is said twice. The second time I'm going to spell it out because it's used the way the UK spells color, or spelled the way the UK spells color with a U. So that will be that. Wood praise. It is complicated, this living for two. Your workspace breached, raking light oblique, revelatory. Outside, leaves raked, lanceolate, sinuate, ovate, fun for the lips, naming diverse shapes leaves take. Pointed, lobed, those egg-shaped ovals one more time, those egg-shaped ovals we drew as children, or the kind I drew, simple, not you. You could do that. See to draw heaps of color. C-O-L-O-U-R, according to you. Replicate dried veins closing off, nodes, petioles, leaves leaving trees to stain ground slick, as during U.S. America's favorite holiday, while I draw on words to indicate quick, empty nod to indigenes in our contented season of reds, browns, golds, gourds, and the great turkey slaughter, these deaths gaily announced as poundage. In high autumn, a tree creaks, then another, several, all, wind perhaps, or a certain weariness, the wind an excuse, evoking an old argument, and I must be missing something. If no humans, then no vibratory meaning within dense fellowship of bark and limb, as ruminants go bobbing off, birds lifting? One pine swoons, its timber caught by a second's vertical affinity till onset of final collapse. Trunk, branches, twigs, needles, some shearing, some holding, boughs pulse slowing above now recumbent wood, taking years to settle. Fresh smells of decay, transfigurations become new life for many and much. No complications, if nothing left behind. Okay, let's see, I meant to say also there are 5 poems being read all together here by me. We're up to number 4, and note, the she-beast sections at the beginning and end are in italics on the page, just like that, okay. The title, Some Animals Mate for Life. She-beast steps outside, head snaps back, nostrils sniffing, assessing stimuli. Sun low in sky, eyes wet slits. All is, Jake, divine, even in that extraordinary way. Everything is fine as long as we are both here, breathing. All else, mere distraction, small change in direction. Your memories and mine, coincident hybrids alive in detail and surmise. Pieces of your life lodge unbidden amid my own gray matter, our hands in a holding pattern. Good. Slips of paper, tongue, memory, all fly. Recall an unpaved road, Danbury, Essex, UK, you scuffing along with your friend Noel, tiny palms unmittened, pressed one against the others, stark cold, skinny legs, bony knee, short pants, shorter days. No wonder the English are cynics. Here, now, did, do, had so wanted you to believe you were not walking into this alone. Tried hard when light shorted, furniture shifted, books cascaded from high shelves onto our heads, or so it felt. She-beast limps back to her hollow, paws debris, freezes, cracks open, continues to engage signals, signs, electrifying, mercurial, uncovering practical lacks. Needle, treadle, bobbin, rope. Okay, this is the last poem. It's in parts. It's in 7 parts. They're short, but it is in 7 parts. The epigraph is from Joy Harjo's A Map to the Next World. Truthiness is something I have lifted from Stephen Colbert or his writers, okay, when he did the Colbert Report. And there are a few words from Samuel Beckett, but he's mentioned by name, so okay. Signaling, the epigraph. Trees of ashes wave goodbye to goodbye, and the map appears to disappear. Joy Harjo. 1. Illuminated days quick fade into umbra. Are selfies to self as truthiness is to truth? 2. Big pharma slays me. Sounds like pig farmer. Kneel beside highway heaving, trying to sense which puncture needs fixing first. Tire? Flesh? 3. Poised as if on leaves, bees will have their way inside soda cans, left and left open near ants working a road of watermelon rinds. Picnickers gone home leave trails, souvenirs of fine days, green or brown bottles as if jeweled necklaces dropped across fields. Aluminum troves crown ferns in forests deepest cool. Plastic pellets, gifts for fish, and later for you and me. Dingy plastic bags snag on twiggy bushes on trees. Witches' knickers, say the Irish, keen to the ways disaster can become poetry's spawn. As Celia in Beckett's Murphy saw the pond, a panic of gray and white. 4. Did those falling spruce and pine sound off without me? If I am not there, do waves still resound, stir air, raise other creatures' awareness? Don't deer spring off, scuds a quiver each time the forest loses one of its own? 5. Stall. Pretend you stand where no one waited or watched before. 6. Mind is manifest in our clevering, in steel, concrete, apps, on restaurant placemats bearing crayons and questions. What do birdies say? 7. They say tweet, tweet. All right, rev it up for the last stint of the last poem. 7. Feet unbewitched by grass will not invest in whimsy. Honeysuckle becomes just another word. Birds shrug us off, board the next clouds out of here. Sensational headline at last delivers us a feel good note. Little Red eats wolf.
And thank you all, and significantly, especially thank you, Elena. You were the first reader of this book, and to you go many graces. Excellent. And just a disclaimer, trigger warning that there's going to be a second reference to Samuel Beckett and Murphy. So I'm going to begin with prose, which is basically the intro of the book, explaining it a bit. The unofficial explanation that I couldn't do in the book launch from my publisher was that several of the poets at Marshak Press that were meant to put out volumes in the spring and the fall mentioned to the editor that, you know, we're dealing with a global pandemic. We can't do this. My manuscript is not finished. I can't, you know, I'm suffering anxiety. And so I basically thought, well, maybe I should take the challenge, the physical, metaphysical, poetic challenge, and try to do something. And then I realized that outside of, you know, getting the poetry published, it was more of a means by which I could answer questions that my students, once all my classes went online abruptly in March 2020. John, how are you feeling? And I take my laptop from my bedroom and show them Second Avenue, and they're like, there's no one there. It's like, there's no one there. And I said, guess what? Last night, over 900 people died just up the street, NYU, Langone, and Bellevue. It's like I saw bodies stacked like cordwood. I took pictures thinking that that would in some ways be some common talisman. I had to erase those photos. But anyway, more on that now. And here's just a battle hymn, and maybe we can attract the ears of passersby. But I taught a poetry workshop in the fall in the classroom with a mask, hardly any students joining me. They were all online. But we did pandemic poems that weren't really just, they weren't simplified art as therapy exercises, some of that, but people managed to confront what we were going through by other means. So the manifesto that we came up with, I'll just say it loudly and briefly. Verse versus virus, verse versus virus, verse versus virus, verse versus virus. An activist approach, sort of like Larry Kramer with the AIDS epidemic, who mentioned early on at an ACT UP meeting, take a look, everyone around you, in about a year, 3 out of 4 of you will not be here. And that connects to David Wojnarowicz, who I mentioned, great activist, dead 30 years ago this month. But Wojnarowicz, you probably know, maybe you knew him personally, but know him as an activist and as a visual artist. He also had a semi-secret earlier career as a poet, and I've checked out the archives at NYU, and it's damn good work, and I reference that as well. So let me read you the intro. Far from being a confessio, this work is mostly a confusio. An ardent yet failed attempt to come to terms with a haphazard thought and experience that have denied me a stable place in the world. A profusion of confusion has inundated me since March 2020, and I figured I should display and splay it, all the while trying to, at the same time, reclaim some personal territory of coherence and clarity in the process. I've largely failed, and enduring the objective, whatever the given effort. In early September 2020, I put aside a manuscript in the making and turned to this project. The inspiration was exhaustion. So too, that dominating state of confusion that stoked resentment. Whenever my students asked me how I was feeling or how I was doing, I would inevitably reply, I don't know. I cannot process any of this. I am still, prosaically and psychologically speaking, that vast clotted cloud of unknowing. However, the practice of poetry helps me translate that unknowing into certain provisional notions, sentiments, reflections, and commentaries. In this long poem, I have strived to be radically honest to myself and to my potential readers. In this document is a lot of doubt, but also heaps of faith, rage, and lament, striking love and smiting hatred. None of these words do justice to this work, but this work seeks justice for this world. It is still waiting for it. This pandemic has only revisited many of the well-lighted chambers and too dark habitats of our human society, forever embattled by viral and vital forces emanating from elsewhere and deep in ourselves. Mapping routes through a pandemic world and all the contingency involved in living or thinking through it is encoded in the scrambling of the subtitle. So it's Remnant Halo, a map and dice chronicle. Pandemic equals map and dice. Scramble those words. Pandemic, map and dice. This volume was written with the hope that poetry could be a site of stability, a repository of trauma, but also a powerful, multifaceted prayer. It was modeled after the old Irish voyage narrative, the Imram, showcasing travels to underworlds and otherworlds. Throughout the past year, we all have visited these other worlds without having left our own. The tone of Remnant Halo can be dark, so the poem structure could be said to resemble the architectural form of Confessio, interlocking crypt passages, stanzas as crypts. But there is another abiding influence, and it also has Irish roots. In the beginning was the pun. This quotation from Samuel Beckett's 1937 novel Murphy is in some ways a foundational source of inspiration for this work. Often, recourse to punning was for me in these words a coping mechanism, image generator, and concept creator. The puns abounding here mean serious business. While the references in this long poem are almost exclusively male and predominantly Irish, the resident muse and mobilizer, in keeping with the Imram enterprise and impetus, is female and piratical. This work casts itself adrift in the name of Grania Namali, 1530 to 1603, who still sails the sacred seas rebelliously and redemptively. She and so many rebel girls, irreverends, and experimental wanderers inspire, provoke, and protect. They shadow this text decisively. The frequent mention of faith acts almost as a stuttering machine, a willed and needed affirmation of faith as a trademark of personal and communal identity. It is less a nod in any religious direction, but is absolutely a summoning of spiritual force. We need that force now and forever. Draft completed October 20th, 2020. U.S. coronavirus deaths, 211, 846 people. First revision, January 19th, 2021. U.S. coronavirus deaths today exceed 400,000 people. Final revision, March 1st, 2021. U.S. coronavirus deaths today exceed 513,000 people. In incurtum spiritus. So I'm just going to dive in and just read a short part of a long work. But here is a line, a new line, and we addicts have to approach it as a new day, new life. This new line renews, and somehow some of that alternate song seems true, but not proven. Contingent memory remedies this reading, permits bypass of disaster by dismantling it, shattering our once shared sense that this necroplane is the endpoint, and so then our only terrain on which we can tread. Solace extends to an isolated subterranean track, obscured by techno-rights and media feeds, a through other enfolded neatly in the missive containing every first and last line of the heraldic, hybrid, international epic, composed across countless cultures and so many centuries by the Guild International, authors obscure and half-known, together elaborating a perpetual people verse to displace the vermiform verbiages prominent in our everyday squeal and spiel. Dreamers can dream. And in Rojava, that modest dream territory of North and East Syria, fragile yet firm, still the communal correlative to this poem as world mover thrives in spite of conflicts, internal and exo-exacerbated. Autonomous, author, autochthonous authors emerging from grounded legacies instead of established academies. The autodidact dedicated to art is no fiction. As Rimbaud's face rode the MTA, thanks to David Wojnarowicz's project, his provision to make I as other, both himself and not self, Arthur maudit and Arthur made other, both done away, gone away, so damn prematurely. I often pass D.W.'s last residence on the corner of East 12th Street and 2nd Avenue, look up at his bedroom window, and wave a greeting 30 years too late. The plague took him, quote, and this is a poem line from Wojnarowicz, dying as a mirror expressed in artifices. Dee was a poet as well as a painter, prophet too, pandemic paraclete, sage of rage. You would stand indignant as virus vectored across the globe, abetted by emissaries of ignorance and mortality reducers, would defy the tide and stand not for the mayhem moving across and through us, in us too. Amens over mayhems, praise be the solar plexus placed prayer, prayer the soma arata that may yet move mouths into configurations congenial to grace. Grace. The grace race still instructs space. Let us now resurrect the representation, if not the thing itself, of pilgrim's progress in the form of a remnant halo shared by disintegrating persons and jellyfish, each fortified by the fierce, frantic gesture towards renewal while uncertain futures await on either shoreline or soul side. Earlier today, the soul of struggle lustrated in the gallery at the Met, where Jacob Lawrence's American Struggle exhibition unrested, writhing with ecstatic and subversive energies, blending and bleeding the citizens and citizen slaves in vivid senses scripts fields. Art during plague is revelation. History's plague inscribes disease deep in the human family's reservoir, never revelatory, but reveals surely the crude cataclysm of our community initiatives, at least most of them. Lawrence's law unfolds the edict of activism and Black Lives Matter in colors that ripen real and rage, that word again, this age in need of it so resolutely. And the black figures seem semaphores calling for, then and now, another possible relation, challenging state and psyche, making way for harmonic heritages where struggle lives on as competition to establish the utmost compassion. But I am jumping far beyond the painting's frames, am in fact creating a jumble of images, light shows, fragile hopes that a poem can only futilely fathom in the little rooms it adds to itself, and accretes down the page, slivers of life that beckon at oblivion and break badly as any obscure self in the selva oscura of lyric arbor shell, despite the urge to go on. I must go on to the terrain of trusts and that imparts protectorate status to the imagined glory of greater worlds possible. Then I am thrust off the poetic track as the death toll due to this virus exceeds 200,000. Elegy, I elude your properties in coming to grips with these numbers in this makeshift underworld that visited us, not vice versa. No guide to govern heart tremors or statistical breakdowns. Led by the hand, the soul breaks off. A procession of dead that cannot be accurately processed. Grief trials hover over the autumnal months. Paul casting down is covered in toxic chemicals that dying generations will feature in their end songs, savoring the full-throated shriek across the tundra, only barely realized as personally voiced, not echo, not memory. The horror. But there is another cry, another call to order, license to vacate abyss abode, resist that pre-invented world. Thank you, David W., and contrive new chartings, voicings, vatic field operations to evoke escapist yet confrontational settings and secure that paradise invoked under an infant's eyelid, waiting for its transmission into the collective witness box of an early spring, and feeling, if not season. Obsequies will not grow obsolete, and those shadows will sustain, setting forth from the constant stream of terrors. So too the tripwires of confounded spirit and those dark thoughts, pressurized in skull, the old relic box. Gather graces and forces. This autosuggestion arranges itself like gauze on wounded psyche. And suppose that trauma just might alter, not just alleviate, leaving us sad still but not disconsolate, ever ready to engineer methods mixed with magic and conjoined with practice to advance a new arc, as ecumenical as my eye, to strike forth and out. These lines are composing in Newark, New Jersey as the sun sets down on the first day of fall, not the first day of the fall. This city was founded a year before Paradise Lost. Proleptic, retrospective, purgatorial city, your residents reside in me, at once so beleaguered and yet bold, attractive in that manner reserved for the coolest derivations of art genius germinating from the streets and city walls. Go with me now, with ghosts accumulated over many walks across these desolate avenues, raked by overhead surveillance lights mimicking foundry furnace spark signatures signing into that gloom. Now swerve, compose in darkness and rearrange one's brain to harness the recognition of too many ruins and repose not. I embrace swervings as only antidote for direct sense assault, so am now moving on. If you could join me in this poem, I would be less forlorn, forward-footed, and exact. But now vagaries and vagueness pervade and stymie whatever counter-trends I might attempt to make. only form of control or resistance these or any days. Autumn abolishes absolutes or any slight redemptive pulse when eyeing evidence so caustic and enormous. Details defy imagination in their onslaughts, or else parse particulars so strenuously that they tend to bleed facts and flower frustration. More strenuous than the flu, it was dubbed, around Valentine's, seemingly pre-P time, Valentine. Sacred scope of agape epic against this agony season. Just announced, NYC homeless relocated uptown, now thrown downtown. Poverty, poetry, everything in tatters. Ill-gotten gains glossed by garish sentiment. I am sorry. Rights, aborted, abortion rights, contortion consciences, distortion sites, concentrate, concentration, camps, dispersals of references and refugees, the ethics of an amen, the wherewithal to not grieve so prodigiously on the 10th anniversary of her passing. Amen, Ma. I'm inscribing you in me in this poem while plague perseveres. Never will I sever that vein that merges me with you. That menacing mood of Octoberism this year will bring me to the brink, breaking point, whatever descriptor debases the real, and cliches abound to be harvested and heaped as they are, thwarts and all. Elegy for ebb and so much besides. Thank you.
What? No, I turned it off. I turned it off before I moved it up and down.
Like
What a pro!
There's no mention of Samuel Beckett in any of these poems, just FYI. Thanks, John Curley. So, I'm dedicating this reading that I'm reading, the work that I'm reading, to my mom and my aunt. They died last year, a month apart of each other.
May 10th.
2 months, right. Yeah, 2 months, yeah. Most of the poems will be from my book, I Used to Be Korean, which is my second book. A couple of them are new. This poem that I'm starting with, I wrote in my head while we were at Greenwood Cemetery yesterday. Was it yesterday? I'm sorry, I keep staring at the mic. That. Okay, there you go. I'm not a techie. Okay. You don't know. The moth in your kitchen could be your mother come back to see you. Your mother who died in the hospital last year, where you asked the doctor to send you a picture of her, and he did. It reminded you of the Werner Herzog movie scene when he warned that lady not to listen to the recording of the grizzly man and his girlfriend being eaten alive by a bear. Not that your mother was eaten by a bear, just by her circumstances. But what if she was the mosquito you just smacked against your leg at the cemetery, in between looking for birds by the dell? Someone's bad joke about karma. But really, she could be the heron you'd never seen before, standing in the water, all knees and bill, stabbing at fish. And in your head, the conversation goes, "Pardon me, by chance are you the reincarnation of my mother, a tall Korean woman who married a short dentist? But if this is her, why don't you feel anything? You who believe in signs, who looks for signs, who dreams in signs. She is the sign, isn't she?" And this poem I wrote for my mother prior to her passing. You live in the space behind your eyes. Look at this universe you've built for old school friends and your favorite Shakespeare teacher. Your father smelling of tobacco and beer is here too, and the cousin who died in childbirth. You picnic here, forage wild greens, gather fallen chestnuts, and bite into all the persimmons, never minding the juice running down your chin. So what I have always known is true. You are a mother made up entirely of memories. Sorrowful membrane, combative DNA, regretful ribosomes. And the truth of it at a quarter tilt is that your primordial bacteria structure is coming undone to be swallowed by your bleak house of loose nails and sagging walls. And I forgot to put my glasses on. I had to get reading glasses this year. These are plus 150 or so, 1.5 or something like that. This is a poem that I wrote for my aunt while she was in the hospital. I think it's probably maybe last year. It was the Methodist Hospital on 7th Avenue and 6th Street. Animal of Truth. In this light, I can see the animal of truth become you, unleashing equal parts delirium and deliverance. What can time take that you have not already let go? Sight, sound, taste. Return to the next in line. How expert you have become in looking into the space behind your eyes. So this poem is a lot of my poems are about food for whatever reason. This one is based on a memory of going to a friend's house in the 6th grade and eating cinnamon toast, making cinnamon toast. Cinnamon toast. Buttering those thin slices to the brink of destruction, bedazzling with sugar and cinnamon, shellacking fingers and teeth, our lubricated lips kissing in your white kitchen before your mother gets home, while our grammar homework gets cold. So, 1951, waiting for the Chinese soldiers to go. It was the coldest winter when we pulled up the last radish and cut into her white flesh. She was almost hollow, except for the larva taken up residence. We tried not to mind this archive of bodies because it was the closest we'd come to meat all these days. Would it be poetic to say we'd become chess pieces in the dear leader's Hunger Games, except that the king has no more grease than the pawn, because we're all beggars now. And the Chinese soldiers have become sad squirrels, drop-picking any missed opportunity acorns. The good thing about the coldest winter is that the azaleas will be their most fuchsia when they open. That's what we thought anyway, that the azaleas were waiting for the soldiers to go before they would start. But what happened is that they stopped for good. This poem I'm going to read just because it was rejected so many times. Don't tell me why you think it was rejected so many times. Existence, 7 levels. Samurai. On the razor's edge, your spine must be the sword. Metaphor. Heads in a sack, each one a bloody exclamation, punctuating your exultation. Politico. Jesus had a plan that went viral. What have you got? Girls in half shirts tweeting at halftime? Artifact. Night at the museum is firm buttocks, rouged lips, sharpened teeth, is pygmy behind glass. Dogma. In Sinatra's swan song, eternity is played by Ernest Borgnine, who stops and frisks all the army scenes. You won't box? Then I'll put you in one. Classic prima dogma syndrome. Death. Bloated sewers and dead bodies on subway platforms. You know the water has nowhere to go. Poet. Henry Dumas rifles through our icebox, looking for that last drop of cream for coffee. Who's going to tell him ghosts can't drink? After this, I have just two more, or one more. FDR, it's a French word. FDR, with his mind firmly on the war effort, worrying about a rubber shortage. Fighting the Japs and Krauts takes a lot of natural resources. But King Leopold has no worries with his 3 squares and comely cheese plate avec all the Armagnac he can drink. After dinner, concubines unwrap him from layers of brocade and leather, rub him down like a New Year's pig with a tonic of witch hazel, black pepper, and rosewood oil. Neither man thinks of your life in the green heart of the forest, gutting and flaying, floundering and pounding, trees and men, men and trees, so that a word from 14th century France may roll off your tongue along with your hands and feet to become flotsam in the mouth of the Congo. I love Armagnac. That is really friggin' delicious, right? Amazing. Amazing. Okay. This is based on a true story. It's ridiculous for me to say that, right? Because everything is based on a true story. Beautiful Mutant. In Rochester of 1992, after a dinner of spaghetti and red sauce, we went to a bar where I became a pygmy under glass, where I was made to Oda Benga myself into a beautiful mutant. No rope was thrown to capture me. I was simply surrounded by men who frequent bars, in gangs, in groups, in mobs, to make a point about ownership. Alas, to be a beautiful mutant in America, among the wilted people stuck in their time, like that girl in Little Rock, whose face is frozen in forever, but still twitching hate. Her digitized face will outlast the pharaohs. Not even time can erase those rage lines or close the angry gash that is her mouth. Who led her down this pansy path of entitlement in an incidental town where she was taught to gloat about birthright, and where no one told her that separate water fountains was a dick move? Like being in this tattered town that serves the weakest red sauce this side of the Mason-Dixon, you'd think it was pink. My last poem is titled Bollocks. This is the disclaimer. Disclaimer. The opinions in this piece are solely that of the author. No British musicians were harmed in the writing of this poem. 1. Fame. This idea comes out of your ears, is your need to believe you can fly. But here you are, an algorithm of privilege and desire, shooting down the sun with your terrible ambition, so you can claim to have discovered gold. and become the slick mimic, a coyote gesture without charm. 2. Your black girlfriend. I am coming down all over you. I am the night. I am the rain that takes over. The ships came packed with bodies, buzzing with heartbeats. Are you the first in your family to love a black person? Congratulations for taking no responsibility. 3. Fred. You used to cut my hair in your East Village apartment. But when I said Eric Clapton was bargain basement blues, you gave me bangs. Gee, thanks. 4. Elvis 2.0. Your drunken talk printed on paper is all we remember. Elvis Costello hearts Ray Charles. I do want to just read something quickly, a little quote from Padre Gotuma, who wrote this great book called In the Shelter. He wrote, "This is our truest dignity, to be alive and to have a story to tell. This is the richness of becoming more and more fully our own selves." So thank you, Elena and John, for sharing your stories.